Hi, this is Ken LaValle of Enterprise Bank, and welcome to another edition of Enterprise Bank Presents Dollars and Cents. It's great to have you today. Of course, I'm accompanied by my guest host, Prima Nagathan of Enterprise Bank as well, and we have a very special guest today, Superintendent Bill Taylor of the Lowell Police Department. Bill has been the superintendent now going on 4 years. He has been very much involved in the community, does excellent work. The Lowell Police Department does excellent work. So very proud of the Lowell Police Department and the all of the community interactions that they have. And part of the community policing initiative really is for the superintendent to be on a show like ours, to come and talk to us about some of the things that are going on in Lowell, in the Lowell Police Department, and how the private sector, the banking industry can work together with the public sector, and how we can make Lowell a better place to live. So I think, Prima, you probably want to start off with the first question for the superintendent?
Sure, but before that, I have to say I feel a little humbled being here today with the current chief and the ex-chief of Lowell Police Department. So
I wouldn't.
So this is definitely a very special show for me. But thank you, Chief Taylor, for coming in today. As you know, and our community members who watch our show know, we try to talk a lot about some of the things that's going on within our communities as far as frauds and scams, and what are some of the things that people need to keep in mind so they can protect their money, their information. So that's what our show is really geared towards, really helping the community members. And today we want to focus about what's going on around this time of the year. As the summer months are approaching, and finally I'm sure we'll have some nice warm weather, there are a lot of things that people have to be aware around this time of the year as far as the drive-based scams. And I'm sure there's a lot of different things that are going on within our communities that you're seeing, Chief. Can you talk about some of the types of scams that are out there in Lowell?
Well, various types of scam have been going on for, decades, hundreds of years. The thing that has changed is the introduction of technology. So it really has taken it to a new level. And we see a wide variety of them. You talked about the traditional driveway scams or roofing scams, where somebody will present themselves at somebody's door and tell them their roof needs to be replaced, or their driveway, or they have, a truckload of extra asphalt that they can put down, things like that. Yeah. And so we always advise people that if it sounds too good to be true, it almost always is, and to use appropriate judgment and not participate in those type of things. The other thing I think that's really important is Kenny, I'm sure, can attest to, people pick their victims pretty carefully, and it's really an art form to some extent. The people that are involved in this kind of illegal activity, they can drive down the street, and by the car you drive, the look of your house, what's in your backyard, they can make a very good guess as to the age of the residents and who, if you live alone, if you don't live alone, and they really are very good at it. So they tend to, compensate, and they go after elderly people or the people in the community that are most vulnerable, people that English is not their primary language, things like that. And so they're very, very good at it. So always, if somebody presents themselves at your door, what we recommend to people is that you don't participate and don't take advantage of it, and go through more reputable types of local businesses that you get a referral from family members or neighbors or co-workers. That's always the better course of action. And
that actually reminds me, there was a customer of ours who was elderly that unfortunately fell victim to the payment scam, and I think that they're targeting that class of people only because they're more trusting.
Sure.
And they not only messed up her driveway, they made a really big mess, so she had to spend more money. They actually got her to write $8,000 towards the pavement, which was a very small driveway work, which was so unreasonable. Thankfully, she was able to call the bank, and we were able to notify the police, and they did arrest the individual that was trying to scam her. But we find this quite often that's going on within the residential neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've seen, in a personal experience, my elderly aunt, who lives in Lowell, just a couple of years ago, she was in her home. A gentleman approached, knocked on the door. Hey, we're going to do some work in your backyard. We're from the city.
Right.
They were trying to get her out of the house to go into the backyard while his accomplice was waiting in the car, who she did not see. But much to their surprise, she locked the door when she stepped outside. So when the other guy got out of the car, tried to get into the house while she was being distracted in the backyard, he couldn't get in. So now they started to get intimidating. You've got to let us in the house. We got to get into your basement. They tried to force their way in, and luckily, an alert neighbor saw what was going on, came over, and when the neighbors came over, they sped away and they went back to where they were from. So this is very, very common.
And
yeah.
you know what they'll do is two people will present themselves at the house and say they have to check the water pipes, or you know, they're only limited by their own imagination to try and find ways to get in your house. One person will occupy the person that lives there while the other person supposedly checks the water or whatever it might be. And what they're doing is they're going through your house trying to find valuables or money, because they know that, you know, elderly people are more likely to have cash in their house than younger people, right? And so they know that, and so they will go to that extent, and they'll try and rummage through your personal belongings. Everybody thinks, and I know this from personal experience too with my in-laws, everybody thinks they have a unique hiding spot, right? Yeah. These people are very good, very good. It's a like I said, an art form, so they can very often find the hiding spots. And people think they hide it well, but you know, we all put it in the same spots.
They're probably looking for cash, they're looking for a
jewelry.
checkbook, medication sometimes they could.
Medication's a
very
big
easy
one
to
now.
locate.
Absolutely.
Right,
Yeah. So what we tell people is, anytime somebody comes to your home like that, they should have a credential from their company. Certainly the City of Lowell, they all have credentials that identify them with a photo image that they are a member of the City of Lowell Water Department. If they don't have that, then I would call the police immediately. If you have any concern, you're unsure, call the police. We'll send an officer over to verify their identity. In most cases, the minute that they realize you're calling the police department, they will leave and you know, get out of the area as quickly as possible.
And also, if you're able to make a note of the vehicle that the person was driving, or like a license plate, have that ready for the police officer. So
Absolutely.
even if they take away from your house, they're probably down the street trying to scam somebody.
Right, right.
You know, recently I just received a call from a businessman here in Lowell who told me that his father was actually targeted by these scam artists and called him out of state and told the dad, "We have kidnapped your son. We are demanding that you pay a ransom for his release. We have him at gunpoint." So this was a very frightening thing. And of course, it was all made up. It was completely a hoax. Is this something you're seeing occur more often now as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, not only professionally, but from personal experience. A relative of mine was, they tried to take advantage of them, not a hostage situation, but it was that a family member had been arrested out of
I
state,
see. Right,
and they needed bail money. And typically the way they do it is they'll call, and they do their background research, so through the public databases, they can get access to the identity of the people in the houses. There's a multitude of different ways they can do that through the registry of deeds and local census data, and you know, all kinds of different ways to get that. So they make that initial call. Again, they tend to target older people, people that English is their second language, and then they'll make an initial inquiry and they'll say, "Hey, your son is got arrested," and then inevitably the person says, "Oh, you mean Ken or Bill?"
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, Ken," and then they'll jump in right away and say, "Yeah, it's Ken."
Right.
And then you know, then the variation, it's either arrested, held hostage, in an accident, whatever it could be, and then they hospital, and then they typically need cash payment. And what they do is the new way that they'll do it is they'll have you go to a local CVS store and get Apple gift cards or iTunes cards, because once they get the number that's on the back of that, they can redeem it as essentially like cash.
Right.
So that's all they need.
Yeah.
And Ken, I remember you mentioning something on the similar lines of the kidnapping type of scam about a couple that received calls, which sounded so surreal. Can you share that?
Sure. Yeah, we actually had, as part of the ongoing training we do with our local police departments, we were in one of our departments up in New Hampshire speaking with the captain, and he told us a story about what had happened in his town where a married couple, business owners in the town, received simultaneous phone calls. The husband was being told the wife had been kidnapped and she was being held at gunpoint, and the husband was being told the wife had been kidnapped, so they both were being told that each other had been kidnapped. They tried to call each other, couldn't get through because they somehow had compromised the phones, and they felt this was extremely believable because they had indications or were able to track the whereabouts of these individuals. So when they were talking to him on the phone, they told him exactly where he was. So in his mind, that solidified the fact that they actually had his wife, and that she, that the husband had also been kidnapped, and they both actually fell victim to this scam and sent the money, believing that they were going to be, kidnapped and harmed, and they sent the money out, and it was gone.
Terrible.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
We tell people don't, if you get a phone call, usually it comes into your home phone, which is another indicator, because right off the bat, a lot of people have disconnected their home phones, so they know right off the bat if they call a home phone number and they're getting through to somebody, that puts you likely in a certain segment of the population. Very often older people that rely on that traditional technology, which we all do, but a lot of us now, our home phones never ring. Right. Or if it does ring, it's some kind of a telemarketer or whatever it might be. And so, but if they get through, they know right off the bat that they've got potentially somebody that they could exploit like that. And so that's that. So we tell people, anybody that calls your house that's looking for any kind of money, don't give it to them. Don't give it to them because it's almost always now some kind of a scam. And like I said, they're only limited by their own imagination about how they can, try and exploit people.
Absolutely.
And Chief, you made a good point in your conversation is about these types of scams are organized crimes, and they're doing some research as far as what information is available on an individual. Now we talk about social media, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn, and people are putting in so much of their personal information out there. So they know if you're away on vacation, out of the country or out of the town. Or how many family members you have. So I think that's where they're really accessing this easily, freely available information to target some of the people.
So we've even seen in Lowell, within the last year, a business owner from another community that was targeted and robbed right in the city. And as we started our investigation, we tried to figure out how he was identified that he was going to be at a particular location. What we found out afterwards was that a criminal group that operates had put a GPS system with a burner phone that doesn't come back to anybody underneath his car, so that they could track him, and they knew he dealt in cash, and that they could follow him to a particular location, and they tracked his movements for a few days, and then they were able to ambush him and get a pretty substantial amount.
And such an inexpensive way to do something like that. It's just tremendous what they come up with.
But the reality is that kind of technology is cheap, very accessible. It's impossible to trace back to them very often, and it's very successful.
I know we have to go on a quick break. So Chief Taylor and Ken will be right back.
Very good.
Program is proudly sponsored by Enterprise Bank, a full-service commercial institution serving 17 communities. Enterprise Bank helps create successful businesses, meaningful jobs, strong, vibrant communities, and opportunities and prosperity for our customers, shareholders, and employees. To speak to an Enterprise advisor, call 978-459-9000 or visit our website, enterprisebanking.com. Enterprise, an independent bank with community at its core. Member FDIC.
Hi, welcome back to Enterprise Bank Presents Dollars and Cents. This is Ken LaValle, again with Prima Nagathan and our special guest, Superintendent Bill Taylor of the Lowell Police Department. Chief, I'd like to talk to you about some of the stuff we've just been, referencing in terms of crimes being committed against people, frauds and scams, and financial crimes, which Prima and I investigate quite regularly when customers of the bank have been victimized. How is the opioid epidemic playing into, and how is it interrelated with the current crime trends you see in financial crimes in the city of Lowell?
Well, there certainly is an impact, but it's not as substantial as we witnessed during the late 80s and early 90s with the crack cocaine epidemic. That was a significant spike in crime related directly to that, the introduction of that drug and the epidemic that we all experienced, you and I, during that time frame. This one is somewhat different. And what's interesting is about a month ago, I attended a conference down at NYPD headquarters in New York City, and there was a discussion about this. And the chief of detectives for NYPD highlighted the point that we all knew, that there hasn't been an increase in violent crime or financial crimes related to this epidemic. And the reason for that is that the product that the people are consuming is so cheap that they really don't have to go to great extent to generate the income to support their habits.
Right.
Now, there is some of that. We do see some of that, and we've seen a couple of cases recently where people are, committing crimes to support their habits. And you see a lot of it with the motor vehicle break-ins and some house breaks, right? So there is some of it, but not to the proportions that you would normally expect to coincide with such a large problem related to opiate addiction.
Right. Do you think that, conversely, when you're looking at the inexpensive cost of heroin compared to what it was when you and I were working in narcotics and saw how expensive a bag of heroin was, the number of people that are dying is so incredible, so high. Is that impacting also less violence because there are fewer potential victims?
Well,
that's just a thought. What do you think?
Well, what I think, Kenny, is when you and I first came on the police department 35 years ago or so, and I went in the drug unit a couple of years later. So in 1984, I was purchasing undercover heroin in Greater Lowell, and we were paying $45 for an individual dosage unit. We call it a bag.
Right.
And the bag was, say, 25 to 30% pure. Well, that same individual dosage unit is essentially almost 100% pure now, laced with fentanyl, and the price for it is $6 a dosage unit.
Wow.
So you can see, and that was 35 years later, the reduction in the price and also the increase in the potency.
In the purity.
So that's why there's not this connection to property crime directly related to the opiate epidemic. Now, we see the financial cost in many other areas,
Obviously,
right? The healthcare industry, certainly the devastation that has been impacted on families and communities, heartbreaking stories that we all hear every day. Just tremendous.
Now, recently you were part of a major operation involving the federal authorities, state police, Lawrence PD, Lowell PD, and there was a big arrest that, a couple of people from Lowell, most of them from Lawrence. How would that impact the current situation, do you think, in a
So they used, as an example, this organization that was dismantled, and I think it's a very good example of how, when we work together in these regional task forces with federal, state, and local law enforcement officers, we pool our resources and we can be much more effective at these very complicated and complex investigations to really dismantle a whole group like that. And so they seized 2 kilos of fentanyl. And when you do the calculation, how much they pay for that fentanyl to be imported from China into Mexico and then driven up here, the financial benefit is astronomical. $5,000 worth of fentanyl could potentially, down the line, realize multi-million dollars in profit. It's unbelievable. And so you can see why, from a financial perspective, these organizations, they're more than willing to take the chance at coming up and supplying us in the United States.
Sure. And I would imagine that, and I think you even were quoted in the paper as saying that there may be, as much work we did in this particular case, there'll be other people coming up to replace them and to continue doing this.
Well, there will be potentially, obviously, but we want to make it increasingly apparent to them that we're coming after them, and we're going to hold them accountable. And I think that that's one thing that we have to be sophisticated enough as a society, and certainly in law enforcement we understand this, that there's a difference between the individuals in our communities that need our help, the people that are addicted, many times through, whether it's an orthopedic injury or a chronic illness, and then eventually start down that road to addiction. Those people need our help. We have to get to those people and try and encourage them, do everything we can to get them into recovery. But that's different than the people that are profiting off the destruction of our communities. Those people that are just motivated by pure greed and profit, and they don't care who they kill, they don't care the destruction that they sow and the families that are impacted. Those are the people that we have to go after aggressively and hold them accountable and put them away.
Wasn't there a report that on some of the intercepted conversations about they were chuckling, they were laughing about people dying?
Absolutely.
overdosing,
Right.
and they thought that was funny.
Well, they could kill us.
They could kill us.
Yeah,
Right.
it's all
don't
about
care.
greed, money.
Right. Absolutely.
And then they take the money, and it usually leaves the country as quickly as the drugs come in.
Right.
They try and get the money out to many times back to Mexico or things like that.
Sure.
So absolutely.
Let's change. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
there's
Did you have a
so
question?
much happening. I was kind of segueing into our next discussion is there's so much going on within our communities, whether it's something that's happening right now as we speak. How is the Lowell Police Department keeping the community aware of some of those concerns so they can start to plan ahead? And I know in the recent weeks there was an incident and
Right.
several things that are going on within our communities all the time. So what are some of the approach that the Lowell Police Department takes to keep the community aware and up to speed with what's going on?
Well, I think the most prominent way that we try and do now is through social media. We do all the traditional things, shows like this, the local, more traditional news media outlets in the community. We also are very accommodating to them. But increasingly what we find a very effective tool is social media. We're on all the significant platforms. I think Twitter and Facebook are two of the most prominent ones that we use. We use Periscope and we're into Snapchat. But still, Twitter and Facebook are predominant ones. And it's an extremely good way for us to get out an unfiltered message directly to people in the community and get it out quickly in a timely fashion. We've even gone recently, we started this during the winter, during one of the most significant snowstorms. We had live broadcast on Facebook and Twitter our press conference that we did from the Emergency Operations Center to bring people up to speed about some of the precautions and some of the things that we were doing for that snowstorm.
Right.
And so we did that during that most recent incident where we had a manhunt for a murderer in the Highlands section. We had somebody dedicated to get quick, effective Twitter feeds out to the community, and then we also broadcast a couple of the media outlets, media briefings live through our through our Facebook and Twitter accounts, and people had overwhelmingly positive feedback on that. So I think it's something we're definitely going to expand on in the future.
Right.
So.
Now, when that situation was occurring in the city, and it was protracted, it took a couple of days, and was very disconcerting for a lot of people who lived in the city. Civic Ready is something you also utilize, and explain what that is, Chief, and how that was utilized that particular day.
So the city has a platform that we can get out. It goes out either a voice, email, or text message, and it allows the people to customize how they want to receive the message.
Okay.
Right? And so you go to the City of Lowell website, and you can access into the portal to put down your personal information, how you'd like to get the information. And so we send out those alerts. We used to call it a reverse 911 or a code red. Now it's called Civic Ready, and that's how we do it. And you can get it. Some people like to get a phone call at night, but during the day they like an email. You can customize it however you prefer.
And would you kind of use particular neighborhoods and not others?
That's right.
To make
Yes.
so those notifications went out when this particular incident was going on. It was concentrated in the Highlands neighborhood. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah,
I see.
exactly.
Very
Yeah.
good.
And so to give you an idea, we follow some of it's called megadata on some of our various social media platforms. And we have well over, I think, 15,000 people follow us on Twitter. And that's ever expanding. And so we do certain things to try and encourage people to follow us. We're
Right.
trying to get that message out. It's a very good way to follow
Yeah.
us.
I think it's great that you have so many different avenues. So even if you're not into social media, you still have the option of signing up your home phone or your cell phone to
Yeah.
Right.
get some of that very
That's right.
important information.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to, from a financial institution standpoint, what I want to remind our community members today that are listening on the show is definitely Lowell Police resource to you. If you have someone at your doorstep or on the phone calling you, intimidating you to give your personal information or to sign a check or to give them cash, do not hesitate to pause, wait, don't jump into it right away, no matter how much they can intimidate you with their conversation.
Scare you,
Scare you, or maybe they look very professional and have a fake ID on them to say that they do belong to a certain corporation, which they may not. Call the Lowell Police. Let them know right away, and you will send an officer to assist them and to have them take a look at that. And also on the other side, from a financial institution, is review your banking statements regularly. It is sent to you every month. You have access to it online. If you do have access to a computer or a smartphone, you can check your statements regularly, you can check your transactions regularly. Anytime there is a transaction that you don't recognize, no matter what the dollar amount, call your bank so they can stop the payment, or they can put a stop to the transaction immediately before you incur a loss.
So I'm also under the understanding that people that use online banking and check their accounts that way typically are safer because they're constantly monitoring any potential illegal activity, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and now
that's right.
credit card companies have monitoring process in place. So if you're doing a transaction that is a little abnormal to your normal activity, you will get a text message or a call from your credit card company or your bank to say, is this a transaction that you're incurring? So there are definitely controls in place, but then again, you as an individual know what is right or wrong on your account. So that constant monitoring is something that we constantly encourage our customers to do all the time. And be very careful before you give out your social security number,
Oh,
your
yeah.
date of birth,
Never.
your passwords. Never share your password with anybody, or a PIN number on your debit card with anybody, even if it's a financial institution, or even law enforcement will never ask for that information. So definitely be aware there are resources, including your police department or your financial institution, that you can go to and verify if that is something that's legit or not.
The inclusion of chips into debit and credit cards, has that significantly reduced the illegal activity around those things?
It definitely has reduced from what we have seen, and I'm not a subject matter expert in it, but I do understand that. From what I understand is we still have the mag strips. So I think as long as...
It do not have a chip, right?
So we do have the chip and the mag
Oh, I
strip.
see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're still kind of leaning on the mag strip technology. So unless we're completely chip based only, which I think is going to take many, many years.
Really?
And also there's a lot of businesses that are not still supporting the chip capability. So there are still businesses that are still requiring mag strip. But there's definitely been an improvement in
Good.
some of the fraud that we are seeing on debit card and credit card based on the chip technology. It seems to be working pretty good, but there's still a lot more work to be done.
Good.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Enterprise Bank Presents Dollars and Cents. We've had Superintendent Taylor. We've had a very informative conversation. Prima had a lot of great questions, and we hope you tune in. We hope you watch regularly, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.